This is Psalm 55, verses 1 to 5, 16 to 19, and 22 to 23. Verse 1 says, "Give ear to my prayer, O God, and hide not yourself from my plea for mercy. Attend to me and answer me. I am restless in my complaint, and I moan because of the noise of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked. For they drop trouble upon me, and in anger they bear a grudge against me. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me." Verse 16 says, "But I called to God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon I utter my complaint and moan, and he hears my voice. He redeems my soul in safety from the battle that I wage. For many are arrayed against me. God will give ear and humble them. He who is enthroned from of old, because they do not change and do not fear God." Verse 22 to 23 says, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. But you, O God, will cast them down into the pit of destruction. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in you." Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Today we are looking at Psalm 55. Again, we are told, like we were yesterday, that this is a Psalm of David. And we're not sure what point in David's story that he penned this psalm. But I do wonder if there is some of the feelings, some of the emotions, some of the pain that David is experiencing in this moment that we could maybe identify with or relate to, wherever we are in our journey today. He says at the beginning of Psalm 55, "My soul is overwhelmed." He was overwhelmed with trouble. He was overwhelmed by what he was right in the middle of. He goes on to talk about being overwhelmed with fear, overwhelmed with dread. The Passion Translation in verse 5 uses quite emotive language when it says, "I shudder at the horror that I face." And we've just come out of Holy Week. We've celebrated Easter. We've celebrated that Jesus is alive, that he's risen, that he's conquered death and the grave. But it was a verse in Matthew 26 that caught my attention towards the end of Holy Week, when Jesus, when he's about to make his way to the cross, he knows what's coming, and he gathers his closest friends around him, gathers them close and says, "Will you pray with me? Will you watch with me? Will you sit with me? Because," this is Jesus speaking, "my soul is overwhelmed with trouble." And there's something about that experience of Jesus that I found strength in, that I found comfort in over the last couple of weeks. And the writer of the Hebrews said it really well in Hebrews 4 verse 15. He says, "We have one," speaking of Jesus, "we have one who is able to sympathize with us in our weakness, who is able to sympathize with us in the trouble and in the difficult moments that we find ourselves in." And as we seen yesterday, maybe that was the moment that David needed to that remembrance was what David needed to transition from fear to faith. We see that word that we looked at yesterday in verse 16, but I will call to God. I will call to the one who saves me. I will call out to the one who is enthroned. He will answer. And he turns this request and ends with an expression of trust. But before he gets to the expression of trust, I think it's worth pointing out that at the end of verse 19, we have this little word, Selah. And I just want to make reference to it because it's something that we don't often do very well. And it simply means to pause in his presence, to stop, to take a break. And so we could do that today. In the midst of all that is going on, we remind ourselves that the Lord is the one who saves, that the Lord is the one who is enthroned. And we pause in his presence and remember that and take hold of that. And it leads, and it means, I think, that we're able to conclude in the same way that the psalmist did here, with an expression of trust. And in verse 22 he says, cast all your cares upon the Lord and he will sustain you. See, we can't carry this on our own. All of the emotions, all of the fear, all of the stuff that we're so tempted to carry, we can't do it on our own. And so the expression of trust that the psalmist encourages us with is to cast it on the Lord. To trust him by relinquishing all control. And that's really difficult for many of us. But the expression of trust will be seen in our ability to relinquish control. And again, there's a translation of those verses that puts it beautifully, and I end with this. Leave all your cares and anxieties at the feet of Jesus, and measureless grace will strengthen you. So Father, I pray wherever we are today, whatever emotions we're feeling, we own them and we express them to you. And as we remind ourselves of who you are, that we would begin to ask of you. We would begin to ask of the one who rules and who reigns and is alive. And you would help us to be people that cast all our cares on you, to bring all of our stuff and to lay it at your feet, Jesus. And we will conclude in the same way that David ended this psalm with, as for me, I will trust you. Amen.